welcome to RetCon 2022. We've got a very famous guest here today.
Should have been two.
He should have been two.
But he looks like me, so just imagine him.
We can always print off another one for you.
I was thinking about a big mirror or something.
So we've got Philip here today. I'm afraid Andrew couldn't
Tested positive.
say no more.
I haven't seen him recently, so it's fine.
Okay, I will let Philip get on with his talk about Dizzy and all things retro.
Excellent, thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Cool, excellent. Should I stand? Should I sit? I'll stand. Okay, I mustn't stand in the way of the screen, so I'll stand over here. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming on to talk. I hope it will be entertaining, and I am sorry that Andrew can't be here, but hopefully you got a better one. What can I say? Now, hopefully I'll cover. The plan is, Steve's generously given me actually 2 slots, and I said that what I'll do is I'll break it into 8-bit days, covering all sort of the stuff like Super Robin Hood and Disney and all that kind of stuff, and then come back at 4 o'clock. I should probably put this slide up now. And then come back at 4 o'clock and talk about everything we've done since, because we didn't stop there. We just did quite a lot then under the name OliverTwins, and we've done quite a lot since. So without further ado, what have we got? We've got about 45 minutes, I believe, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end as well. So I apologise if this does sound a little bit formal. Also, when I was running through the slides yesterday, it did feel a bit like I was doing my CV. So sorry about that as well. But I'll try to make it funny and entertaining as well. So, Andrew and I were born in the 60s, time of space landing and sci-fi, and that's what a computer looked like. It probably had about 1K of memory, in fact. But the good news was that cars did actually self-drive. So they were quite ahead on that front. But we didn't know much about the 60s because we were born in 67. We grew up in the 70s, so we know a little bit more about that. And sci-fi was really in. We would watch Star Trek on TV, and of course Star Wars came out in 77, which was just mind-blowing. Anybody who was there then when that happened, oh my god, that was incredible. And of course, towards the end of the late 70s, the first computers sort of started appearing, desktop computers started appearing, as opposed to room-sized computers. And that PET is kind of one of the first things that we saw. And cars looks like that. Shocking. Anyway, sorry if you had one. But our sort of formative years were definitely the 80s, without doubt the 80s, time of Back to the Future and throwing out TV and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that intrigued us most was arcade machines. In fact, Space Invaders managed to slip onto the 80s line. That's when we saw it in the 80s. Obviously, it's a machine released in 79, which probably a lot of you know. And Pac-Man. But there are the 8-bit computers that really sort of informed us most. So we were absolutely fascinated by them. A friend of ours, his dad was a college lecturer, and he had an Apple IIe, and that's where we sort of first started playing games. But then our older brother bought a ZX81, stuck it under the family TV, and then discovered girls, so that was fine. Me and Andrew could get to use it when we got home from school. But we did discover a very important lesson from the ZX81, that we needed a better computer. Anybody's used one, paper keyboard, which very rarely works when you type in stuff, and if you manage to type stuff almost instantly, it goes out of memory because you've only got 1K of it. So we wanted to try to see if we could recreate Pong, and even that was hard. I'm not even sure we pulled that off. But it gave us the bug, and we decided to move on to a Dragon 32. Dragon 32 was talked about, it was coming, summer 82, and it had a real keyboard, it had 13K of memory, it had colour, all things we thought was awesome. Spectrum was talked about at the time, the 16K one was kind of out, and we considered it, but it didn't have a real keyboard, and it had 16K of memory, so we kind of discounted that one. So we got a Dragon Tape 2, fell in love with it, but we realised there weren't many games for it, but that's fine, we'll just make our own games, because we kind of had to. They did have a few decent games, and there was the Donkey Kong clone, whatever it was called. Anybody?
Wasn't Killer Gorilla?
That's the one! Killer Gorilla. So it's quite a few hours into Killer Gorilla. That was like almost the only decent game on Dragon, or the only decent one we had. I'm not saying it was the only one, but obviously games are quite expensive as well, so you don't have too many as school kids. But we managed, because there was a lack of games, we managed to learn how to program BASIC and how to program a computer. And we were only programming BASIC. So the first, I've seen this listing actually, the Roadrunner around here, so thanks very much. That was the first thing we had published, and that was in '82, and it's just a type-in listing. We could actually program better than that, but what we wanted to do was make sure that it was really clean, elegant code that wouldn't take too much time to type in. Because sometimes you get to these magazines with the type-in listings, and it's pages and pages of listings for a very simple game. What we wanted to do was actually have a very short listing, which was quite easy to understand, but actually was quite a good game. Debatable whether we pulled that off, but anyway. Before that even was published, we actually moved on to BBC Micro because it was a much better computer, it was much more popular. We saved up loads of money. Our parents loaned us money that we had to repay. So many odd jobs around the house and outside, and cutting the grass for the neighbours and all that kind of stuff, and the newspaper round and stuff. And so our first game was pretty rudimentary, and it was written in BASIC, and it was Telescope. But at the same time, we entered a TV competition, and that game actually got published by Acorn Soft, which at the time, Acorn Soft were the premium brand for being a publisher. So we were chuffed to bits. They took them about a year to publish it, and by the time they did, it was kind of embarrassing because we knew how rubbish it was because our skills moved on so much. So it's slightly embarrassing. It's kind of cool they published it, but also slightly embarrassing. But it's on a nice old traditional flop we were just discussing earlier. I wonder if that actually loads anymore. But the good news is you can actually, if you're curious enough, we've set up a website, OliverTwins.com, and we put all the games with screenshots and everything else. And actually we found emulators of pretty much most of our games that we just actually play through the web. And that's actually one of the ones we never expected to find. It was actually quite interesting. Just click the link and you can play it. Don't. It's not very good. Anyway, one of the things we found when doing this game is that it was written in BASIC and it's incredibly slow. So the next thing we had to do was learn machine code, and on the BBC that's 6502. And a teacher at school, we had a choice at school. The way timetables work in schools, you have to do like one humanities, one science, one art, and plus maths and English and stuff, and one language. And the way the timetable worked, they just added this new subject on, which is called computer studies. And unfortunately, it didn't fit nicely in the timetable, so they added it to the language strand. So you got a choice of French, German, or computer studies. Basics on language, let's be honest. So we chose that. So don't test me on French or German. But it was really good. We had to actually go across to the local college, which was just across the playing field to actually learn that. But the teacher there, he knew assembler, and that was magic, because back in those days, it was a black art, if anybody understood assembler. And so we spoke to him about an art package we wanted to do, because we wanted to produce graphics on screen. It's like, this is all just line commands, and it's rubbish as a result, and very slow. But we wanted to move sprites around the screen. That's what we want to do as a game developer. And so we spoke to him about how we could do convert some routines into assembler. And actually, he was very, very kind. He said, give me a little bit of BASIC on the BBC Micro, and I'll give you the assembler back, which he did. His handwriting was dreadful. I mean, college lecturer, handwritten assembler, it was dreadful. It took about a week to kind of translate it and get it working, but in that time we learned what all these instructions meant, because we didn't have a book on it or anything. It's like, why is he using that instruction and that instruction? And we worked out, and we got it working, and my God, was it fast. And we was like, oh my God, this is incredible, this is like life-changing. So the next thing we did, so we actually went to try and get that published, AZR did get published, but the next thing we did was we thought, what we really need is a sprite routine. We don't want to just draw on graphics. I mean, effectively, that's very, very good in Photoshop. What we really want to do is move sprites around the screen. So we basically, now we've learned assembler, we created a sprite package, as we call it. Some people call it middleware these days. And we created this, and it was very, very fast sprites and scrolling and a few other bits and pieces. I say very fast, very slow back in those days, but it was all right, it worked. We just managed it. And we started making games using this. At first, we just did a couple of easy things. Killipede on the side, and then Magic Maths and Magic Clock were just a sort of, what can you do in BASIC? So Magic Maths and Magic Clock were written in BASIC, but using the sprite routines that we'd written in assembler. Which worked okay. I forgot this one. So this is me and Andrew winning the competition with this game.
Well, now it's time to find out who's won our computer competition. A few weeks ago we asked you to design a game and send it in either as a drawing or else as a cassette. Just remind us what sort of special things you were looking for before we meet the winners.
Well, it was looking for obviously the game concept.
Right, let's meet these guys, shall we? Can we have a nice welcome, please, for our computer competition winners, Philip and Andrew Oliver from Trowbridge in Wiltshire. Where are they? Which is which?
I'm Philip.
Andrew and Philip. All right. But the thing we ought to do really is take a look at your game in action. Okay.
The arrows in the top corner, incapable player. So I'll move the wall first.
It was all really basic.
Prizes anyway, and I know that everybody will be green with envy. They got a nice computer of their own at home, so we said, why don't you choose another prize? And you decided to go for what's called a high-resolution monitor, whatever that is. For goodness sake. So once again, congratulations to the winners of our computer competition, the Olivers.
Thank you. I'm glad we found that video. You know what? Back in the day, you had to take stuff off the TV. So somebody had been left at home to sort of make sure they programmed our sister, to make sure that she kind of pressed record at the right time and then stopped at the right time. And you got this one tape. And this one tape was kicking around for years. And then one day it just disappeared and we lost it. We just thought, that's it, it's gone, we'll never find that again. And then one day somebody in the office, he'd completely taken it home, because I think it found its way into Blitz games and clearly kind of taken it home, watched it, and then left it in his collection. And one day, I thought, oh yeah, I just found this in the office. Yeah, right, I think you found it home. But anyway, thankfully it had been returned, so we quickly digitised it. And now we've got it forever, which is cool, because it is quite fun. We can laugh at it now. We were very, very embarrassed when we went to school on Monday, I can tell you. But, especially the jumpers. Man, the jumpers. Right, anyway, so those other games were done while we were in sixth form. We were supposed to be studying for A levels, but they were boring. Making games was much more exciting. But we got to the end of sixth form, and our parents wanted us to go to university. We didn't want to, because back in those days, it was like learn Pascal or how to do sort of, I don't know, databases and stuff like that. Not interested at all. So we managed to convince our parents to take a year out. Still on the year out, by the way. But he did sort of say, look, during this year out, if you can earn more money than me, then you don't need to go to university. So that was, right, we know the rules. We can do that. So we decided we need to focus a little bit more on getting paid for games, because those other ones we hardly got paid anything. We need to focus a bit more on getting paid. So just finished exams, went down W. Smith to sort of see what was selling, and number one game at the time was Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters on C64. So we took a look at it and looked at the magazines, because we thought we've got to be a bit more commercial about this. And our conclusion was, it's crap. That was our conclusion, whether or not that was right, because I know there's a lot of C64 owners who loved it, but our conclusion was it was crap. Our conclusion was the reason it was selling is because it had the Ghostbusters logo on the front, and Ghostbusters was awesome as a movie, and the music was big in the charts and all this. So we thought, well, people are just picking it up because of the name, aren't they? They're just buying it because of the name. yeah, so that's what we got to do. And we can't go to Hollywood and negotiate contracts. So we thought, right, well, we're going to have to find sort of a free IP. And obviously Disney has been using free IP for years, like Snow White and all those kind of things. So we came up with the idea of Robin Hood. We wanted to sort of age it up a little bit. Projectile weapons are always good. So we came up with Robin Hood, and then we thought we'll stick the word super in front of it to make it a little bit more unique and a little bit better. I have to say that it turns out that at exactly the same time, Miyamoto was doing the same with Mario. We didn't know about this, because that's Super Mario Brothers, as opposed to Mario Brothers. Big coincidence. But anyway, and we thought we were going to go to a trade show, so it was the September '86, Novotel, Hammersmith Roundabout, and we went there with the idea that we were going to pitch the concept of Super Robin Hood and show them the kind of games we've got, and ask if anybody would sort of commission us to make this. At the same time, we were talking to Firebird about Excalibur, so we were doing kind of a little bit of a inspired by Gauntlet game at the time, it was going to be really, really difficult. And Firebird had said yes, but they never sent us a contract. And so we just thought, you know what, whilst we're waiting for the contract, we'll just see if we can slip another game in, like an easy game to make. And Firebird, the contract was going to be worth £10,000. So in today's money, that's more like £30,000. To make 3 versions of Amstrad Spectrum and C64. And it was quite an undertaking, and we hadn't even got a C64 at that time, so thought we'd figure that, we'd worry about that when the contract turns up. Talking to Codemasters, we basically showed them an A4 piece of paper, which I wish I had, but we've lost it, which was Super Robin Hood and roughly what it was going to be, and the little sketches of the screen laid out and everything. And we showed them the games that we previously produced and said, how much would you pay us to make this game for Codemasters? And David Darling said, £10,000. This is the really easy game to make, as opposed to the other one. Like, this was Amstrad only and stuff. So we thought, well, yeah, okay, we'll do that. So we were like, yeah, brilliant, right, we'll do that. So we went home to our single Amstrad machine and just basically worked 23 hours a day. We had to give the computer time to cool down a little bit because we don't want it overheating, because if it blew up, it had to stop. So kind of did half-hour breaks. And we took it time shifts to make sure the computer was in use the whole time, and when we were awake, we'd be working stuff out on paper if we weren't at the keyboard. And we got it done in a month, and went straight back to them, because we don't want to change their mind. For God's sake, when somebody says they're going to give you £10,000 and you feel like it's a school kid, you don't want them to change their mind. So we took it back to them, showed it, they loaded it up, had a look, and said, yeah, that's fine, here's the contract, just sign it. And we looked at the contract, and it was 10p per copy. And we're like, well, where's the £10,000? Oh, no, that's an estimate of royalties. And I was like, oh. But, and it looked like we were walking for the door, quite frankly, at that point, because we'd been shafted quite a few times already. David sort of said, look, I'll tell you what, we'll stop. If you want to sign it now, we'll give you an advance on your royalties of £2,000 right now. 2,000, right, okay, that's much more than we've had before. It's like, we were getting paid $200-300 for the other games we made. So we were like, yeah, okay, we'll take that, and that's an advance, so we're going to get more later. Actually, Super Robin Hood was hugely successful. We're straight to #1, they got it converted to the Spectrum and Commodore 64, we got even more royalties. It did earn over £10,000 eventually. So of course, when that's happened, and you feel like school kids, I know we'd kind of just left school, but we just thought we'd got to do that again, so immediately we did started on Ghost Hunter, set ourselves the same kind of a brutal time limit of 1 month. But whilst working on it, about 3 weeks in, we visited Codemasters to sort of show them what we were doing and say, this is the next game coming through. We were like, let's have a look at Robin Hood, because we get them all source code. It should be there by now. And they basically had just like a little running man on the screen, and that was it. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. We were saying, this is so slow, you're going so slow. It's like, it took us kind of 4 weeks from start to finish, from a piece of paper to finished product. And David just said, you do it yourself, and he just gave us a Spectrum. I was like, yeah, okay, because we get to keep all the royalties that way, because the deal they had at Codemasters was the originator gets half the royalties, and the person who converts it gets the other half. So like, yeah, okay, fine. So it took us another week to convert it from the Amstrad to Spectrum. That was our very first Spectrum game. It took about a week to do. After that, because of the way we used middleware, we didn't have to write those routines again. So actually, pretty much every game after then took about 1 day to get to the Spectrum. And half of that time was testing, just making sure it does actually work, because we convert the routines across. Obviously, the third game in the series was Dizzy. We did some other games, but I'll come back to those in a bit. We managed to link the Amstrad to the Spectrum with this funny little cabley thing here through the printer port, so that actually we were using our Amstrad 664 to do all the assembly. We had a Maxam card in the back for the assembly language. And we were able to compile on the Amstrad, send it down the cable, the Spectrum code and the Spectrum data to the Spectrum. If it crashed, it didn't matter, you just reset it, reload a kind of little boot file. On cassette, God, cassettes. Still giving me nightmares. We got through so many cassette records. I threw several at the wall. I was just so frustrated with loading cassettes. It's horrible. Anyway, but using nice Amstrad CPC disks, lovely, we were able to develop the code very, very quickly, compile quite quickly, send the code down, get it working. So that was one of the sort of tricks we had, was that we were able to make sort of middleware and then able to link the computers together, which back in those days people didn't really do. I don't know how people program Spectrum without another computer. Crazy. We didn't do it that way. We wanted to come up with a third theme for our sideways action platformer games. And we decided we'd done Medieval, we've done Haunted House. What else is there? And at the time, we were watching the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon on TV. We always stopped at 4 o'clock to watch all the kids' cartoons. We loved Count Dracula and stuff like that. Which is why there's several things in Dizzy about Count Dracula. But anyway, you probably know that. We just thought, yeah, we'll do this kind of a mystical kingdom, and we'll set little puzzles in it. And it was quite a nice game. Artwork was a little bit curious. The problem is, when you booked artwork back in those days, it was just a phone call to the artist. It was kind of pre-faxes. So the fact the artist calls you up and goes, "What's your next game about?" Well, it's kind of about this kind of, well, it's character, and he runs around and he has adventures and goes in caves and up mountains. Which character look like? Well, it's sort of like an egg. It's a big face, but it looks like a bit like an egg with kind of boxing gloves and red boots. All right, that'll be enough. I'll do that. That's what it is. I don't know where the two guys come from for that. Oh, but it's like, well, I never mentioned that, because they weren't in there. Anyway, it did okay, a little bit of a slow burn, but a year later it was still selling quite well, which by this time the sales were pretty good. And so we thought we ought to do another one, and we've made quite a few improvements. We've got better at coding, we've got a few ideas. So we came up with the wrong name, that's what we come up with. Why does it say the Ultimate Cartoon Adventure Across Dot Project? That should say Treasure Island Dizzy. Right, anyway, never mind. So Treasure Island Dizzy came out and it was an instant smash hit. I mean, absolutely. I think Evermore Dizzy bought it and then some. I mean, it's probably 100,000 sales in a week or something. It was crazy numbers. We're like, whoa! Did not expect that. And there you go. Fixed it. It just happened. Right, but what we didn't want to do was immediately produce another Dizzy game straight off that, even though we were massively successful. One, because we had a lot of other ideas we wanted to do, but also because we would be cannibalising our own sales. Because shopkeepers would sort of say, "Oh, there's a new one, take the old one off the shelf." That's kind of how it works in the sort of games industry, as we learn. So we thought we've got to leave it a decent time for the sales to slow down of Treasure Island before we release the next one. And the next one, we managed to improve many things. Give back 3 lives, because we had on Treasure Island famously removed 3 lives down to 1 life to fix a bug. Oops, not a good solution. That said, everybody still loved Treasure Island Dizzy, so maybe it was, I don't know, because people loved it, so would they have loved it even more with 3 lives? I don't know. Anyway, but we found it to put the lives back in, and we put a couple of dragons in, and we put all the characters, the yoke folk, and loads of characters, and we really went to town on Fantasy World. It took about 6 weeks as opposed to a month. That was us knocking it out of the park. But yeah, we loved it, but I have to say, 89, we kind of figured that was released about November '89, so he's probably going to quote me. But it was about November '89. I'm remembering back to when we programmed it. I know it was in the autumn. Kind of came up with the idea during about August, wrote it mostly during September, released probably late October, early November. And everybody loved it, but this was the end of the 8-bit machines. You go into shops and they'd stop selling the computers, and actually the shelves with 8-bit games was reducing considerably. And we just thought, yeah, this is kind of the last hurrah for Dizzy and our 8-bit games. But it did sell spectacularly well, and people wanted more, and we moved on. But Codemasters were anxious to get more games. Public really wanted more games, so we thought, well, we'll just turn to designing them instead. So we'll map out what we want roughly, and then Big Red, another software developer that was in Leamington, near Codemasters, they basically said, we'll take some royalties off Dizzy Games, we'll do them for you, and so we agreed. So I would do all those little sketches, and all describe them as kind of walkthroughs as how to play them, and then those guys would program them. I have to say that Prince of the Oak Folk, I'm not going to take all the credit, they actually did most of the design themselves, and it was really, really good. By this time, it was really me just designing this, because Andrew was busy doing other things, the console stuff. And why did we do the arcade games? After doing Treasure Island Dizzy, we realised that Dizzy was massive, and we just thought, actually, we don't want to do another adventure game that will cannibalise the sales of Treasure Island, but if we did a fun little arcade game, which turned out to be fast food, then shopkeepers want to take our old adventure off the shelf, because they'll just see it as a completely different thing. And we were always consumed by Pac-Man. We absolutely love Pac-Man. It's the game that made us get into computers. Actually, kind of. It was Taxman on the Apple II that we were obsessed with. Because actually putting 10p's into the arcade machine with Pac-Man was quite expensive. So it was Taxman that really got us into it. And every computer we had, we always thought, wouldn't it be cool to write a game like Pac-Man? And actually by this time, we'd kind of mastered coding and making games, and we just thought, God, that'd be really easy to do that. And if we had Dizzy on the front cover, man, it would sell bucket loads. Yeah, but we're in the middle of writing Grand Prix Simulator 2, so we shouldn't really. We have this work ethic that when you come up with a good idea, you've got to see it through all the way. And you do, as a game developer, get really low points going, oh, this is a bit of crap actually, I'm a bit bored of this idea now. Oh, but I've got this other exciting idea. And I have to say a lot of developers used to do that. So we have this work ethic. Sorry, can't start the other idea until the current one is finished and shipped. So it's like, oh, it's a really good idea. Ooh, you know what? It's coming up to Christmas, and if we gave Codemasters a new game next week, we got it out for Christmas, it would be a #1 bestseller because it's got Dizzy on the front cover. And so we were like, well, it's Friday afternoon, and we came up with this idea. It's like, well, as long as we're back working 9 o'clock Monday on the simulator, the Grand Prix Simulator 2, as it was, then it would be fine. So we just decided to just work solidly all weekend, no sleep, to finish Fast Food. And it was mostly done by 9 o'clock Monday morning. All the maps were done, everything worked, coding-wise and everything. We did get asking a graphic artist, Neil Adamson, to go back and tidy up some graphics over the following week, and David Whittaker to do some music and drop it on. Unfortunately, Codemasters was so flipping slow they missed Christmas and they didn't get out in time, which was really nice. Anyway, but that was really, really successful, and I have to say, for 2 days' work, not bad. And I earned quite a lot of money. So we just thought, we're going to do that again. So the following year, we decided to do the same again, but by this time, we decided to move on. So I had the full design of Quick Snacks, but there was another guy at Codemasters. We moved on to console. There's a guy at Codemasters who's a big Dizzy fan, and a coder, a really good coder, Lyndon, and he says, I'll do it for you. I'll just take it. So we know him. And I guess that's what happened with all the other games. Subsequently, people were saying, sort of, yeah, we'll sort of do Dizzy games, arcade games. For sort of a lot of the royalties. The idea of Bubble Dizzy and Dizzy Down Rapids actually came from a game we were making on the NES, which, this is simulators as well. So, Codemasters' first racing game, even though they don't deny it. It was interesting. They had a staff quiz, and now they're up to like 600 or 700 people. They had a staff quiz we heard, which was the first one, and they said Colin McRae. It's like, I think the phone is that one. We weren't there, so I had to tell somebody afterwards. Anyway, they forget their own history. Then the simulators was a really good idea. People like the idea of real-world themes turned into a computer game. I have to say that in 8-bit, on 8-bit computers, it was quite a challenge taking a concept like skiing and saying, how do you translate that to a spectrum? We did our best, that's all I can say. And actually, Pro Ski was all right. I have to say, I wish the bloody Spectrum was running about 2 or 3 times faster because the scrolling is quite disgraceful. Some people might blame our code, but I'd say that the Spectrum processor could have been a tad faster as well. That would have helped. And of course, we needed to buy expensive licenses. And we did a few other games in there as well during the time. In fact, Codemasters didn't even know that we did ISS Ghostbusters because they saw all of our output for them, and they always liked to think we were exclusive. We never said we were. So we got contacted by Activision to do ISS, and then after the success of that, to do Ghostbusters 2, which was cool because obviously we loved Ghostbusters, and to be able to do number 2 was quite an honour. It was quite a lot of work as well, but we did that. We didn't do the design, so anybody wants to criticise the design, we didn't do it. I actually think the design was okay, but it was definitely designed for a machine that can scroll. That's all I can say. C64 it was designed for. And so again, faster Z8 processors would have been useful. Yeah, so in January 90, me and Andrew were a bit concerned that 8-bit machines were dying. Going to Amiga and ST was really, really scary. Lots of people were doing it, lots of people were really proficient in it. You had to be damn good artists, and right up until then, we were bodging most of our own graphics. A lot of the games actually say graphics by and they or somebody else. All the in-game graphics were actually mostly me. I was going to say Andrew, it's mostly me. And I'm not a very good artist, and I don't claim to be. You used to say graphics by, they put somebody else's name, for the person who did the loading screen. That's how it was in the 8-bit days. But most of the in-game graphics were kind of me. And so the idea of going to ST and Amiga was scary as hell, because we can't draw, and we didn't have kind of artists that kind of we knew well enough to do it. So that scared us, and also interrupts and another programming language and all this. And then we went to CES in Las Vegas. That was our opening, going to Vegas. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're all right for time, yeah. So, funny story, Vegas. Turned up in the funny little motel-y place in Vegas, cheap place. And it's a bunch of us lads, programmers, geeky, 21-ish, I guess. And while we're signing in, this lady comes over from the wedding parlour, and she says, "Hi boys, have you got any girls with you?" I'm like, "No." And, "Oh, that's a shame. I can fix you up with some girls if you like, and then you can come to my parlour and get married." We've been in Vegas like half an hour at this point. It's like, Jesus. Anyway, well, that's quite funny. But we went to CES Vegas, and the industry was enormous compared with the UK. The UK was quite small exhibitions. We didn't really ever meet people who played our games, and we'd go along to sort of trade events, but they were quite small. And you'd meet Activisions and kind of all the other kind of companies and Codemasters and people, Ocean, US Gold, Electric Dreams, and people like that. But it was quite a small industry. We went to Vegas and went to the convention center, and it was enormous. And Nintendo had this massive hall. I mean, it just stretched into the distance with the 8-bit NESs, just loads of them. And we're like looking at all these games going, we could write that in about a month, we could write that in about a month. Even Super Mario Brothers was there. I was like, could write that. How many is this one sold, and what price is it? It's like $35, so like 30 quid or something, 25 quid or something. And it's like, how many sales? About 28 million. It's like, we could write that in a month. It's like, that's easy. Which, to prove, by the way, kind of did later, but anyway, because people said, good. Anyway, so we came back from that show thinking, you know what, we've got to go to consoles. Consoles are the future, you can't pirate them. They're not so scary because they're not 16-bit, they're 8-bit still. So that's good. And we can't do our own graphics still, which is quite nice. Although we did actually try to get some people helping us on the graphics at that point. So we ended up producing Fantastic Dizzy and some other games. Fantastic Dizzy, because we knew it was going to be sold for $35, $40, we thought we'd better make it a lot bigger than any other previous Dizzy. So the original concept was put 1, 2, and 3 Dizzy games together, and then add some on top of that. So it's a little bit of a broken design trying to do that, to be fair. But that's what we did. It took about 8 months, which was really, really painful, because up until then we'd been taking sort of 4 to 6 weeks per game, so it was quite painful doing that game. But it was quite good, and then other people converted it to the Mega Drive and PC, and we did the 8-bit ones, the Game Gear and the Master System on ourselves. And then, whilst we were doing this, we wrote a few other games. So BMX Simulator, we actually figured before we started into the big Dizzy game, the day we got back from the trade show, back from America, we thought, let's just start with something simple. Codemasters gave us a dev kit. Let's start with doing something like BMX Simulator. We'd just written BMX Simulator on the Amstrad, so we just like, we'll just do that. So we did that in about 3 weeks, that was easy. Just knock that one out. Before getting on to the big Dizzy, which had to be designed and everything else. So that one we did immediately and quickly. Then we did get the big one, Fantastic Dizzy. I have one here, Fantastic Dizzy. See, I told you the big one. Just compare the scale. Oh. Anyway, then we did Firehawk, which was quite nice. Firehawk is just an update of Operation Gunship, which is pretty obvious. But we just thought of a better, cooler name. Got a bit stitched up because Codemasters didn't do the legal checks on the word Firehawk. Stole a load of our royalties when somebody else owned the name Firehawk and took a whole slug of money off Codemasters for us to continue using the name because they'd already duplicated the cartridges. So Codemasters just passed it on to us, thanks. It's like, well, surely that's there. It was their obligation to check the name. Anyway, we won't get bitter. Because we really like Robin Hood and it was successful, we thought, well, this would be really easy to do a scrolling version of Robin Hood. One of the things of Robin Hood is its flick screen on an Amstrad Spectrum. And we thought this would be really cool to do a scrolling game. And we've seen Super Mario, it shouldn't take too long, so we thought, yeah, we can do that really easily. So we did, and I would say that one did take close on a month to write. So compare it with Super Mario by all means. Go Dizzy Go, that was Quick Snacks because we liked the version of Quick Snacks that Lyndon had come up with, so we basically recoded it onto the NES. We did another little Dizzy adventure because they were releasing this plug-through cartridge system called the Aladdin. The idea here was to drop the cost of cartridges. One of the reasons why cartridges were so expensive was because they had loads of other chips on the board, which made cartridges physically expensive to purchase, to manufacture, and then you pass it all down the line. The idea of Aladdin was stick most of the gumph that you have to have for every single cartridge on like an adapter, and then on the actual game itself, only have the memory chip, nothing else. And it drops the prices right down so that the cartridges, the games, could be sold for $12. Lovely idea, concept brilliant. And if it weren't, if it was officially registered by Nintendo, it might have actually sold. But it wasn't, and there was a big legal case with Codemasters versus Nintendo, which had all sorts of ramifications, sadly. In fact, the ramifications it did have is that we wrote a load of other games which never got released. So we did Wonderland Dizzy. So this is kind of an Alice in Wonderland inspired one, I think, inspired by the Magic Land, I believe. We did Poggy because people didn't realise that Super Robin Hood was a bit like Mario Brothers. They were like, look, we can do freaking Mario Brothers in a month, we'll prove it. So we did Dream World Poggy, which, yeah, it's pretty obvious if you go and play it. I think it's better. Didn't sell as well, obviously. In fact, it didn't get released, not until 2017 through Chris. Where is Chris? Is he around? He's probably downstairs, isn't he? So Chris was doing the book with us. Little bit of a plug, you can buy books, they are signed, because Andrew's not here, we brought some pre-signed ones. 15 quid and the money goes to charity, so, but that's got lots more background stories, loads more stories in about the behind the scenes. The Vegas one's in there, but there's loads of other funny stories about making these games. Anyway, we were talking to Chris about the book and getting the book ready, publishing, and we happened to mention, there's in the book, that we got all these unreleased NES games. And Chris said, I reckon I can work out how to get those manufactured and released through Kickstarter. So finally it was so nice to be able to actually get these games out there in the world, even if they were a bit late. But I mean, as artists, when you make stuff, you want the world to see it. You don't want it to just be, here's a ROM in the loft, which is pretty much what it was. So it's nice to get these games out finally. And especially now we live in the digital world, they're out forever now. So, yep, those games got released. And in fact, even better than that, Evercade approached us and said, Evercade's very cool machines, but they approached us and said, you did a few NES games, can we stick them all on the cartridge? So, it's so cool to just be able to go and click and play all the games. I think it's the best Evercade cartridge if you haven't got it. If you've got an Evercade and you haven't got that, you're missing out. What can I say? By the way, all the money for that goes to charity, so it's not like I'm doing a plug for earning anything. But in about 2017, everybody over the years has been badgering us, going, do another Disney game, do another Disney game, and we go, well, I'm busy, we've got day jobs, which we can talk about at 4 o'clock. The guys did a Kickstarter for Spectrum Next, and we thought it was a really nice machine. We know the people there, Henrik, and he's a massive Disney fan. He was one of the people always, oh, bigger than Disney, please. And we said, you know what, we'd like to help you. We can help you by just being another member on your Kickstarter, or we can say that if you hit a certain goal, we're making you a Disney game. Bit of a throwaway statement, didn't really think it through, because of course he goes, yeah. It was like, oh. So we did a funny little video, which you can see on the website for Wonderful Dizzy, on OliverTwins.com, of us in some European country, capital somewhere, I don't know, just saying, hey, we're going to do another Dizzy game, and we've got a loose idea. It's going to be based on The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and we put that video out there. Of course, then it kind of really dawns on you of like, you can't just do an average one, because there's so many fan games of Disney, and people are kind of expecting the best. It's like, you've had long enough to think about it. It's like, what have you learned? You haven't learned how to make a better one. It's like, oh, God, okay. So we really decided, oh God, we've got to actually sort of try and knock this one out of the park. Which was actually a bit of a scary thought, because at the time we were just like, Disney? Wizard of Oz? Yeah, we can do something. Not sure what. So it's a bit scary when you've just told everybody you're going to do it. But actually, we sat down and we did lots of scribbling and then lots of drawings and plans and everything. And we came up with what we think was a really, really, really good idea. Who's actually played Wonderful Dizzy? Anybody? Only one. Oh, it's the best. It really is the best one. And we won't take any credit for the programming or the arts because we're rubbish artists and we can't go for toffee these days, not on Z80. Probably could pick it up if we had time, but no, Eugenie did all the programming, and he's a wizard at Z80. And they did take a while to make it, because we did about three months to do the design, and they took about 3 years to do the game. But they did an absolutely wonderful job, and in fact, so there's our design. All hand-sketched little screens on kind of A4 paper, all scanned in and then dropped into Excel, and then to give nice instructions. There are actually better instructions than this, it's just funny to do that. There's actually a document which walks through absolutely everything. There's a big spreadsheet, there's all the scripts and everything. I've said spreadsheet. We use Google Docs for everything these days. And so it's much easier to sort of communicate things. But this was just a funny diagram, because this was, here's all the screens laid out in a spreadsheet, and here's every object, where you find it, where you take it and use it. And yeah, it just makes it quite like, oh, it's quite a big game, it's about 100 screens, and it will take a while to play, but it is really, really good, and it's really funny, because I went to town on the script, which they didn't thank me for, because it had problems fitting into memory, but they managed to do some really good compression techniques and fit it in, so it worked. And they did, well, as I said, some great artwork as well, amazing artwork. And I have a cassette, which is really nice, because these days everything's digital. And you can just play it on the website, so you don't need to buy anything or get any equipment or anything, just play it on the website. And it looks like this. Play. Here it goes. compatible with Spectrum 128Ks. Obviously, even as it was, it starts black and white. Obviously. Until I thought people could read like that. But the artists who did this are pretty good at using attributes, colour attributes, better than us. But I did sketch that bottom panel because they said no way can you put red brick road and the yellow brick road and the gates and the bad castle and the good castle all onto the panel. Oh, I said, oh, I reckon you can, so I sketched it all out. And I said, and we can put the items you pick up there, and we can put the lives, and we can put the score. It's like, you'll never fit all that on. It's just sketch it all out. And yeah, I think we did a good job of it. Even though they said we couldn't do it. Don't press people. Anyway, you get the idea. So, COVID, lockdown, you probably know all about that. We basically were a little bit bored. We'd been introduced to Fuse on Switch. A guy, well, John Silvera and a few people down in Oxford were doing this kind of programming language to try and teach kids how to kind of program, but with the incentive that they were making games and they could do it on their Switch. And we thought, this is so cool, so we went down and had a chat with him, big fan of ours and everything. So it was really nice. But anyway, lockdown happened. What we said to him was, it would be so cool if you had like a premier title on your Fuse to sort of, so people can actually see what it's possible to do. And he goes, what are you doing then? I'm not doing it, I'm busy. He said, well, can I have permission to sort of use Dizzy? And I was like, well, if we can get Codemasters to agree, you can. So I wrote to Codemasters, Frank at the time was CEO, and he said, as long as it's for educational purposes and it's all giveaway, it'll be fine. So he went and got all the graphics drawn by Jonathan Temples, and he'd been sitting on these graphics for about a year, and he was kind of begging, go on, done all the graphics for you can make it now. I said, no, we can't. And then lockdown happened, and it's like, not doing anything else. It's like, so we'll knock up a little game on Fuse to show what Fuse can do. Fuse is very, very cool. I think you have to buy Fuse for about £5 or something, but then you make your own games in it and you can look at the games other people have made. But one of the games you can look at for free, it is ours. Everything about Fuse is, one, it's very easy. It's the easiest possible sort of typing language. That's the language.
We were amazed at how powerful and easy to use Fuse was. It made Fast Food Dizzy turn out absolutely brilliant. I think it's so important for the next generation to learn about computer programming. Fuse is the best, easiest, most fun way to learn real coding.
It's exactly where Fuse is based. This is, you love games, you've been inspired by games, let's show you how you can make games.
There you go. So now Dizzy's on Switch. Kind of. Right. Okay, I don't know how I'll do it for time. Yeah, so that's the last one. Some of you may have seen this Dizzy stat, which was quite awesome. £1.60. So, anyway, I've got something. Go back to that. It was quite awesome that they did that. Didn't get quite as much promotion as the Harry Potter stamps that came out a month later. They were on side of lorries and stuff. Anyway, yeah, we can do some questions if you like. Yes.
Hi Philip. We spoke earlier, I mentioned that Dizzy was the third Spectrum game I bought. It wasn't the third Spectrum game I had, but at the time that Dizzy was released I was 17 and just started earning money, and before that the only games I got were given to me at Christmas and stuff. I pirated a lot. I don't know.
I'll be honest, we knew people did, but to be honest, we did ourselves to a certain extent. But the thing is that when games are £10, which in today's money is more like £30, £35 or something, it's kind of your school kids, just like you're not going to be able to afford it anyway. So we loved the idea that Codemaster was selling games at £1.99 because we kind of figured that that made it affordable for everybody. So we liked our games going out at that price, and then £2.99, and then much later £3.99.
So the question was, were you aware at the time how prolific piracy was and how it was
taking
money out of your pocket?
Oh, absolutely, but our way of combating it, and Codemaster's way of combating it, was the price point. If you bring the price point down enough, then it's not worth it. One insider story, that a lot of people would actually go into Smiths and Woolworths and all these kind of places, and they'd buy a game, they'd take it home, they'd tape it, and then they'd walk back into the shop the next day and say, "There's a load, I want my money back." And that was really, really common as well. So Codemasters, to combat that, even on £1.99 people did it, Codemasters to combat that would get all these games back, like shed loads of these games come back, big cardboard boxes, every day would just turn up with all these returns. A lot of them actually have like stickers across the front which you couldn't take off, which basically said defective, doesn't load or whatever, which the shops have put on outside and almost to prove that you're not paying for that. But some of them didn't have stickers. So what they do is they swap around the cases and stuff, and they look at the cassette tapes themselves, and now you're all going to have to go back and look at your Spectrum outro recorders of your tapes. And they would put a little coloured dot just there. Somebody's full-time job was to get a coloured dot, put it on there, on any cassette that being returned, and then immediately they'll put it straight back into stock. Except they wouldn't put it straight back into stock. When they took it out to put the dot on, it's like, oh, it's already got a dot on it. Big. So all the games were, because most people knew they were lying. It's like, these games they did. Well, that's what I said in tape away, obviously. But that wasn't the problem. So yeah, so they have to go back and have a look and see if you've got any that have been returned to the store and they've got little dots on them. But yeah, piracy was a massive problem, and that was the other problem why we didn't want to go to 16-bit. The minute you went to 16-bit, not only was it much more difficult to make the games, much more expensive to make the games, for us, because we would always been doing all of our own graphics and everything else, it's like, it was only our time, really. I mean, we had David Whitaker and Neil Adams at the title screens and stuff like this. But generally, we didn't worry about the money outlay. It was anything coming in kind of thing, which was okay. I mean, royalties were pretty decent. But going up to 16-bit machines, you'd have to start paying artists like decent money. They'd have to have salaries because it's going to take them like 2 months or something to do all the graphics for your game. And then the musician would sort of take that. And then the end punter can pirate the stuff even easier. And it's like, whenever you spoke to anybody who had an ST or Amiga, and some of you would have done, you just got a rack load of discs with like all pirated games. And we just thought the kind of economics of this are a little bit broken. So we didn't want to get into the economics of that. When other people like Codemasters decided to have our games converted to ST and Amiga, it kind of wasn't our risk. There was no money outlay. If they sell, we'll get some royalties, and if they don't, because of heavy piracy, kind of not our problem, it's Codemasters' problem. So yeah, piracy, big problem. Which is why consoles took off and why we went to consoles. Any other questions? Hello.
You all right? On the Commodore Amiga, I had Treasure Island Dizzy as a kid. I was very intrigued to complete it.
Okay, cool.
The only
Don't ask me anything technical about it. I'll be honest, we didn't have a C64, and Ian Gray did everything. He did an awesome job. He did the first one, and then we just gave him a contrast to the rest.
But the only thing that I discovered, that all the walkthroughs were totally different to the Amiga version.
Oh, well, the Amiga version was obviously like a year or two later, and they were done by Andrew Graham, who went on to do Micro Machines. He's currently CTO at Quali. In Leamington. But yeah, he kind of just started, I was going to say, did his own thing, but him and his brother Stuart Graham, they were just a great little team, and they just went off and did their own thing, and they did a great job. So I know he changed it, I know he changed stuff, but
yeah, he did.
we were too busy to kind of keep a track on everything. It's like, look, people seem to like it, it seems to ship. It's like, got through the QA department.
Also on the discs, I've noticed that if you buy an Amiga version,
Okay.
the one I had to start with was version 2, where
Must have been bugs in version 1 then, I'm guessing.
but there is actual version 1 out there as well.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I don't know. I'll be honest, we did have an Amiga 500. The reason being is that when we were producing graphics for the NES, you had to run Deepink 3 because the only conversion tool we had, Amstrad wasn't capable of doing the graphic resolution, the colours schemes you needed for the NES, so we had to use Deepink 3 on Amiga. So we had an Amiga and we used it for Deepink 3. I mean, Deepink 3 lived in it, and we didn't really look at our games. So, sorry. We were busy. I mean, a lot of people think that we were experts on playing games. It's like, and up until we kind of, I was going to say up until about 85, I'd say we did spend a lot of time playing it. But the minute our game started to take off, all of our time was just basically making games. We didn't really have enough time to go play games.
Did you also ever think of, back in the day, you know, like certain systems like the Commodore Amiga, they were famous for the Batman pack?
Yep.
Spectrum, 007. Did you ever get the opportunity?
Didn't have any Spectrum games or anybody else's. We saw them occasionally, so we saw the Ultimate Play the Game ones go, bloody hell!
Did you ever get the opportunity to have a Dizzy pack released, i.e. someone, like one of the companies comes to you and go, right, well, we're doing the Spectrum, we would like to make a Dizzy pack up?
Are we talking about like recent machines? Like,
no, old style machines.
Old style. Well, Codemasters take care of everything when it came to sort of releasing all the different versions of Dizzy. They took care of everything, but we kind of fell out with them in about '94, so that's when everything stopped. We won't talk about why we fell out with them, because it's in the book. Somebody behind you had their hand up at the same time. Hi.
The games were in an assembler.
Yeah.
What triggered you guys to start investigating assembler in the first place?
Because we did you miss the first part of my talk? Tough. Watch on the video. No. So we'd written this game, Black Box Gambit. It was actually called Strategy on the TV show. You missed the video of the TV show. No? Anyway, and it was slow and it was difficult. It was only line draws and stuff. And we wanted to put sprites on the screen and graphics on the screen properly, not just line draws. And basically it was way too slow to do anything. And so we had a computer science teacher who we basically went to him and said, we've got this paint routine and it takes about half an hour to just fill a shape. So, and could you just take those few lines of code and turn it into assembler for us? Because BBC had that really cool feature, I forgot to mention this. BBC, you could put inline assembler. How cool was that? And without that, I'm not sure we would have actually made the transition. But because of that, we were able to give him a bit of basic and say, can you convert that bit of basic into assembler, which was like 2 or 3 pages of handwritten notes. It was rubbish. I did actually find that, and I think it is scanned somewhere, those rows, and you'll read them and go, how did you use that to learn assembler from? But yeah, we kind of learned assembler from all those 3 pages of handwritten scribbly notes. But to make paint routine work, and it was bugged as hell, and his code was bugged as hell, because we were back, it's like, God! But by putting it all in and typing it, it's a bit like those listings you used to do, they're quite often bugged in the magazines. But by going through that and then trying to work out where the bugs are, that kind of made us learn it. And my God, was it fast paint routine when it actually worked. It was incredible. And that's what gave us the bug to, right, we got to do more of this. And then we went straight on to write a sprite routine, and then we moved sprite to manuscript. But I am repeating myself now. Sorry. Any other questions, or should we sort of wrap up, because we've got another speaker?
About another 3 minutes.
One more question, I think.
One more, right at the back.
Out of all of the games you've made, Dizzy and the simulators,
Yeah.
what would you say, historically and
Well, in the
Your
80s,
best game.
Fantasy World Dizzy, we were the most proud of, and it was incredibly successful and stuff. Obviously, we've done a lot since, but come back at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
To find about all the other games we've made since, because I've basically kind of covered up to about 92, which is about as far as the book goes. And the reason the book doesn't go any further is it'll be too litigious. It got a little bit iffy. In fact, Chris was saying, "Can you indemnify me about the stuff you said about Codemasters towards the end of the story?" Yeah, it'll be fine. But yeah, so at 4 o'clock, come back at 4 o'clock, and we can talk about everything we did after 92. Happy with that? Thank you.